If you mention that Michael Jordan was 6 out of 6 in the finals in front of Shaquille O'Neal, he will be quick to point out that his team was the last one to beat the mighty Bulls in the playoffs. In 1995, MJ returned and led the Bulls to the playoffs. After defeating the Hornets in the first round, they lost to the hottest young team in the NBA. Shaq and Penny were the duo of the future, a tandem ready to take the league by storm. But in 1996, Shaq's contract was up and the Orlando Magic messed it up big time. Some context for you. The salary cap in 1996 was $24 million. There are 46 players in the NBA right now who are getting paid more than $24 million this year. Harrison Barnes is one of them, with $24.1 million in Sacramento. There were other significant differences. There was no maximum salary provision and no luxury tax penalty. Teams could exceed the cap to re-sign its own player and suffer no extra tax, while other teams had to sign that player under the salary cap. The advantage of teams keeping their stars was enormous. So how did Orlando mess this up? First of all, they started to lowball Shaq. They probably felt their advantage over other teams was so high that they could try to get him with a relatively low offer. Alonzo Mourning, drafted second right after Shaq in 1992, had just signed a 7-year, $105 million deal. That set the market, and Shaq made it clear he needs to get more than Mourning. The number was set around $20 million per year. The Orlando Magic came in with an offer. It was $54 million over 4 years. There's lowballing and then there's insulting. You can guess how Shaq felt about this. But this wasn't unheard of. Teams started low, fully aware that the offer would have to go up. What followed was the first major mistake the Magic did. According to some sources, the Orlando Magic actually tried to create some kind of leverage and criticized Shaq's rebounding and defense. Ultimately, basketball is a business, and the Orlando Magic wanted themselves a better deal. But you don't go ahead and criticize the major aspects of your best player's game, especially if we're talking about Shaquille O'Neal, who just played a major role in knocking off Michael Jordan and the Bulls from their way to the NBA Finals. You tell him he's the best thing that's ever happened to you. After that, Shaq told his agents to get him offers from other teams, and he had 2 conditions. They had to find him a team that can offer him a $9 million under the cap without gutting the roster to offer a 7-year, $100 million contract, voidable after 3 years, and preferably for the team to be in a big market. The teams that made some sense at the start of the process were the Knicks, Pistons, Heat, and the Hawks. All had a way to make it happen, but made other moves that prevented any serious conversations. Enter Jerry West. The first brilliant thing the Lakers did was to trade Vlade Divac for Kobe Bryant. Not just because it was Kobe Bean Bryant, but because they saved $3 million of cap space in the deal. They offered $95.5 million over 7 years, but Shaq rejected it because it was still lower than what Mourning got in Miami. Orlando got a second chance. Things got serious, and it was time for the Magic to blow everyone out of the water and lock Shaq up. They lowballed again, offering contracts with incentives everyone knew were not likely, such as Shaq shooting over 60% from the free throw line. To add insult to injury, they made their final mistake. Joel Corey of CBS Sports had a tweet about this. It said, "The Orlando Sentinel conducted a poll asking whether Shaq was worth $115 million. At that time, you could have asked that question about any player in the NBA, probably including Jordan, and fans would have said no. And sure enough, over 90% of some 5,000 people who responded didn't feel Shaq was worth the money. Shaq had enough, and Jerry West seized the moment. The Lakers made additional moves and offered $120 million over 7 years. A dynasty was born. This is the business side of basketball that players talk about. While lucrative, it can get very personal and painful. Years later, Shaq summed it up like this.
I hate the business of basketball. They need to change the rule that whoever drafts you, you gotta stay with them your whole career. My first 4 years here were probably the best years of my life.
This is obviously a hyperbole from the Big Diesel, but it goes to show how much he loved playing in Orlando and wanted to stay there. After winning in LA and Miami, having an illustrious NBA career and being on the best show on TV, Shaq still misses his days with Penny. The Magic truly messed this one up big time. The Orlando Magic with Shaq and Penny were destined to be the franchise to be reckoned with in the second part of the 90s. This all changed when Shaq decided to leave. While the Big Diesel was the obvious number one on that team, people shouldn't sleep on Penny. Here's how Shaq described his game. People talk about Kobe Bryant and Michael Jordan. Penny was in that category before he got hurt. It was Shaq who brought Penny to Orlando. They were both acting in Blue Chips the first time they met. Shaq never heard of Penny before, and Hardaway wanted to make sure he left the set thinking about him. Throughout the shoot, Penny would create for Shaq and show him how good they would work together. When the movie was done, Shaq went to the management and told them Penny is a deal breaker for him and that they must draft him. During a press conference for the 1996 Olympics, when reporters asked Hardaway how he felt about Shaq leaving, he still didn't know it had happened and answered as if it was hypothetical. The fact that they didn't speak made Penny mad, mostly because he didn't get a chance to convince Shaq to stay. Years later, they patched things up and are confident that they would have won a few championships together. In a way, Penny was the best fit out of all teammates Shaq ever had. Someone who didn't care about being the number one option on a team and was happy to let Shaq lead the way. Unfortunately, Magic didn't want to pay him, and Penny didn't get a chance to stop him from leaving. Their short stint keeps them out of mind for most basketball fans when talking about the fabulous teams of the 90s. But when they were cooking, Shaq, Penny, and the rest of the team were playing spectacular basketball. Thank you for watching this video. If you enjoy our content, please subscribe.